My name's Nick Hammond. I'll be talking about the rule of law in Pakistan. As I researched this topic, I found several reoccurring major issues that conflict with the people's ability to uphold the rule of law. One is that a large population in Pakistan are completely illiterate and have no way of reading or studying the constitution or the laws of the land. One important thing is the constitution is written in English, and there are many people in Pakistan that don't speak English very well and don't even have access to the documents. And that ties into poverty. There's a lot of issues with poverty and a lack of incentive, very little education, and a lack of passion to uphold the law. And then, of course, there's the religion and culture. Sometimes when Sharia law is imposed or tribal laws are imposed, it's hard to uphold the law. On an individual level, people need to have a commitment to uphold the laws of the land. This should happen in their families as they interact with brothers and sisters and parents. It should just be expected that you obey the law and protect each other. That goes with business dealings as well. If each member of Pakistan would vow to obey the law in their business, Pakistan would be very different today, and we see that doesn't happen very often, or it's very slim. And then, of course, in schools, the teachers, the administration, each individual should want to obey the law. In a community setting, there should be some kind of trust amongst your neighbors so that you have some peace of mind. Many times this doesn't happen in Pakistan, where you have feuds or issues with your neighbors, and sometimes that turns into violence. And one example of that is in the Pashtunwali Code, where you can and should exact revenge on a neighbor that has done something wrong to you in a similar fashion. And that type of attitude and culture doesn't make it very easy to obey the law in a community, especially where tribal laws can conflict with the laws of the land. And then each member of the community should be an active participant, and a lot of times we don't see that happening. The next tier has to do with the local law enforcement, and of course there's a lot of negative feelings when it comes to the police force in Pakistan. There's a lot of corruption. Many business owners are required to give bribes to stay in business. There's been a lot of police brutality and issues where if the police force and the local law enforcement don't uphold the rule of law, then how can we expect any of the citizens to do it? And then in some instances, the police force becomes a puppet to either higher government officials or radical groups like the Taliban, and that greatly endangers the people around them. In this tier, we talk about the different branches of government, mostly the legislative and judicial branches of government. Many times, the rule of law is basically set aside in these areas. Senators are always looking to extend their term limits. They try and enforce laws or create laws that inflate their salary while neglecting the common population. There's a big problem with being productive at work. The rest of us are expected to stay busy, whereas a lot of times in government there's a lot of dead time where they're being paid anyway. And then, of course, there's honesty and money management issues where the funds that they're given are not processed correctly, and it costs the taxpayers lots of money. In this next slide, we see how a president can impact the rule of law in a country. If a president wants to stay in power or be reelected, and that's their only goal, they don't. Many times they feel like they are above the law, and that their monetary gain is more important than really the good of the people. And unfortunately, this happens all too often. In conclusion, the most important thing is, without the rule of law, society will crumble. It cannot exist without order and laws. And here are my sources.